Here's the thing about greed. The one who possesses it spares no one, not even their closest friend. The movie Billionaire Boys Club is about greed for wealth and power, which ultimately leads to a nasty betrayal. The real question is, what did they do so wrong that pushed them to take lives? Will they get away with it? Hello and welcome to our channel. Today we'll review and recap an American crime film which is based on true events, Billionaire Boys Club. Let's check it out.
A handsome man with pale skin sitting on a comfortable black leather chair, wearing black shades, his hair flying as he says, "For kids like Joe Hunt and me, being rich is all about respect." This man would crush the business world with his friend, but soon the business world will crush his dreams of being rich. Dean then proceeds to tell us his story and secrets to climb the ladder of success quickly. He was born in a middle-class home, but his parents worked hard to send him to the most elite prep school in LA, the Harvard School for Boys. He tells us more about himself. He faked being wealthy to blend in with the rich and spoiled sons of business tycoons. And of course, he made his way up by sticking to the golden rule, fake it until you make it. Then comes in the picture Dean's best friend, Joe, who shares the same financial background as him. Joe was, however, a scholar student, and no one really talked to him but Dean. They immediately hit it off at Harvard School. None of them belonged to this place, so they found solace in each other's not-so-rich realities. 6 years later, the two friends coincidentally meet at a restaurant in Beverly Hills. Dean is selling the Biltmore as a Corvette, while Joe is out to hunt for wealthy men to invest in his stocks. He works at the Pacific Stock Exchange. Still living at his father's house, Joe barely makes a living. This is when Dean decides to put trust in his clever-minded friend and invites him to a rich guy's birthday party to give him a platform. Charlie Bottom's costume birthday party at Spago does no good for Joe. As soon as he tries to get the spoiled rich kids to invest in gold, he's met with laughter and insults. The night ends up with a deep sense of deprivation. Dean tries to cheer up his best friend by telling him he has all the faith in Joe's genius brain. Joe smiles at him and returns home. Later that night, the sense of deprivation turns into a burning desire to hustle hard. Joe stays up all night to work on his brilliant idea that would soon transform his life as well as Dean's. The paradox philosophy catches his eye as he turns the phrase into a business plan. But what is so good about the paradox philosophy that kept Joe awake all night? Well, it claims that yesterday's failure can become tomorrow's success. If we turn bad into good, anyone can transform every wrong into right. That night, the paradox philosophy shifted Joe's perspective on the law of attracting rich kids to invest money. He figures out that these spoiled guys who were born with a silver spoon in their mouths do not care about the stock market projections or analysis. They just want to be part of something. These rich kids desire to put their name on a business and call it their idea. Dean joins him early in the morning. He sits in awe as Joe tells him about his genius idea of getting the rich Beverly Hills kids to invest money.
Joe's plan is to convince the wealthy sons of the business tycoons that they can be independent enough not to rely on their father's money, so that these rich kids would invest their father's money into Joe's business.
Dean is amazed at the genius plan of his best friend. Joe reveals to him that the company's name would be BBC. To Dean's surprise, BBC turned out to be an abbreviation of a rich boys club that Joe and Dean were too broke to join. The acronym stands for the Bombay Bicycle Club, but Joe decides not to share the full form with the outside world. The meaning of the company would remain a mystery for the strangers, but for Joe and Dean, it would mean attaining the unattainable. So Dean manages to invest a rich guy's money into the gold stock market and asks Joe to double it for him. The total amount of 10 grand would go into the stock market, and in 3 weeks, it was up 35%. The money does perfectly in the market until the investment crashes. However, Joe manages to bluff his way through the market crash and soon pitches his investment idea in front of the born rich kids desperate to be called self-made. Dean and Joe successfully lure the money of the desperate billionaires into their investment market. This is when Ron emerges in the scene. His source of income was left intentionally vague by the writers, maybe because he is known as a hustler in the movie.
Someone who commits fraud but gets away with it, Ron is the kind of guy that young entrepreneurs must not trust. But surprisingly enough, Joe is amazed by his persona so much that he wants Ron to invest money in the BBC.
Meanwhile, the story takes us to quite a vague love story of Joe and his love interest, Sydney. She is also an elite woman working hard to become a recognized artist. The couple sparks their romance when Joe encourages Sydney to realize her unique talent and that her rude boss would be nothing without her extraordinary art. Now Joe has worked hard to steal money, from his investors and rents a luxuriously furnished apartment in Beverly Hills. Along with Dean and other investors that he lured in, Joe officially launches BBC with an extravagant working space. This is the moment Ron decides to surprise these young entrepreneurs, or con artists, with millions of dollars of investment.
The boys are over the moon, not knowing that this billionaire boys club would soon turn into Broke Boys Club because of the cunning Ron.
Rich kids are now convincing their dads to invest money in the BBC. Because of the company's striking performance, the dads are ready to give in the money that they had worked hard to earn, hoping that the BBC would return it with 100% profit. One of the wealthy business owners invests his second mortgage and his kids' college funds into the company, oblivious to the fact that these con artists are about to be fooled by someone very close, and all his money will be drowned very soon. Joe and Dean are getting richer and richer as the days pass by. They even succeed in buying 2 corporations, $12 million in stock options, and patents worth $1 billion. There is no stopping them until Ron cons them. Turns out the sweet and caring hustler Ron has faked the $1 million investment in the BBC. All of a sudden, the Billionaires Boys Club finds itself penniless in the world of investment. Burning with rage, Joe confronts Ron at his house accompanied by his bodyguard, who kills Ron for insulting his appearance.
This part depicts a fictional stance to a true incident. Seems like the movie is trying to justify the real Joe Hunt's deeds by shifting the perspective of the audience, portraying the young guy as someone who is blamed for a crime he had not committed.
Now that Ron is dead, Joe, along with his bodyguard, burns his body to remove any evidence of murder and spreads false information about Ron being in New York. John is shocked after the incident, but Dean reaffirms his deeds by saying that Ron deserved everything that happened to him. Then comes a man named Izzy, a rich son of a disputed Persian man. Dean and John plan to smuggle Izzy's dad to Iran, where he is the most controversial figure. The man agrees to invest only if the boys smuggle him out of the USA. So they tried, and the results were not good. The Persian man wakes up after being under the influence of opium and attacks Dean, who was guarding him as he slept. Dean kills him in self-defense, but disagrees to turn himself into the police, since he was the one who kidnapped the guy.
Now Joe and Dean have another guy's blood on their hands, yet they're still after the money of the guy they just killed. The movie now gives us a fast turn of events.
Joe goes to his father, regretting his business ideas. Later, the police arrest him on charges of Ron's murder. The movie gives a peek inside Dean's testimony, in which he betrays his best friend and blames him for the murder of Ron. Since so much evidence went against Joe, he was convicted of Ron Levin's murder, as Dean walked past him free.
The movie ends with an awful betrayal of a best friend. Apart from the chaos of the hustle culture that's shown in the movie, things seem really off with the script. Like the dialogue where Joe explains the paradox philosophy to the young guys, telling them a shift of perspective can justify anything. However, as we progress further into the movie, the evil ideas of Joe Hunt are justified for no good reasons. To cut a long story short, this movie is a bad adaptation of real-life events of the Billionaire Boys Club. Joe is shown as a guy who was seduced into conning people, but the reality is far from that. The movie was rather a fictional adaptation of the true incident that destroyed the once content lives of so many people. Please subscribe to our channel to be notified when we upload. Also, don't forget to suggest movies that you want us to recap in the future in the comments below.